Story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I had been married for 7 years. 3 years into the marriage, he started sleeping on the couch. We would constantly fight back then because of several things. Number 1, I knew he was cheating on me, but he would never admit to it. Number 2, I wanted to have children, but he didn't want to at the time. Number 3, he never wanted to spend time with me and always prioritized his friends. And this was around the time that he started getting physically violent. Because we'd already been married for a few years at that point, I never saw him as a violent person. It all started by him shoving me one time during an argument. But he shoved me so hard I fell to the ground and ended up bruising my chin. And even though this was a big problem between me and him, it became an even bigger problem between me and my family. As soon as my parents saw the bruise, they started accusing him of beating me. And of course, my first instinct was to defend my husband. My parents begged me to stay with them and I didn't. I went back to my husband and demanded an apology, but he wouldn't even look me in the face. He told me he basically did not care. Once he started sleeping on the couch, it was just like we were roommates. We stayed like this for years. Anytime we got into an argument, he would just look for something to throw at me. One day he threw a jewelry box at me and I ended up in the ER. And of course, the hospital thought it was my husband. So I lied and said that I tripped. And unfortunately, I went straight back to my husband. Part 2 is up. Story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. After years of him pushing me, shoving me, throwing things at me, and even slapping me, I became so numb to it. It would get me really angry and upset at the moment, but as soon as he would apologize, we would just go back to normal. But even our normal wasn't normal. We didn't sleep in the same bed. He was never really home, and when he was always playing video games. This was also around the time that he lost his job, so for 5 years, I was basically the breadwinner. He told me he didn't want to get a job and he wanted to play video games. I didn't tell him anything because I didn't want it to turn into a fight, but I was angry at the thought that I had to now support him. But like I said, my parents did not like him at all. They knew something was up because I always had some sort of bruise. My parents made it a habit of showing up unannounced to our house. I was actually really grateful to my parents. This didn't upset me at all. But my husband, on the other hand, hated my parents. One day he asked me, why do they even care about you so much? You're not that important. Around a year ago, I started feeling really sick all the time. At the time, I didn't know why. One day, I walk into the kitchen and see my husband holding eye drops in his hand, but he quickly put it away. I asked him why he was holding that, and he said nothing, mind your own business. So I did. A few months later, I'm having a conversation with a coworker, and he told me a story about somebody using eye drops on someone else to make them sick. This is when it all clicked. I had all these weird stomach issues, and I never realized that it was him putting eye drops in my coffee. This is when I decided to file for divorce. Instead of filing for divorce and leaving him, I went home and told him that I was going to get a divorce. He grabbed a hammer and started chasing me. I locked myself in the bathroom. Part 3 is up. Story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. When I saw him grab the hammer, I started instantly running. I ran straight to the bathroom and locked myself. The good thing is that he would never damage this house because he does love it, so he didn't swing at the door. I stayed in the bathroom for an hour explaining to him why I wanted to get a divorce. After the 2 hours, I thought he had calmed down. He basically told me that he would give me the divorce with no problem. But let me remind you, I was the breadwinner and he had no job. He was completely dependent on me. But as soon as I opened the door, he pushed in and started hitting me. Unfortunately, I didn't tell anyone in my family what my plan was. Suddenly, I wake up and I realize I'm on the ground. 4 hours had passed. I get up and look at myself in the mirror and my face was completely swollen. I walk into the living room and my husband was there playing video games, just like he did every day all day. As soon as he sees me, he says, "You better go wash your face." Instead, I grabbed my things and ran out. He didn't even bother chasing me. I called my parents on the way to the hospital and they met me there. Luckily, there was no major damage. My parents helped me file a police report, and when the police showed up to see my husband, he had cleaned the bathroom. Guess what he told them? That he was the one that wanted to divorce me because I was crazy, and that I had made up the whole attack. He says that I must have hit myself in the face. That's when the cops asked him, "How do you know that she was hit in the face?" Gotcha. He said he had assumed that I was being hit in the face. My brothers and parents went over and kicked him out. I sold the place and bought a house down the street from my parents. I am now so much happier. I feel like I'm aging backwards from not being around him. The constant feel and nervousness I felt around him took a toll on me, and I just hadn't realized it. To this day, he says he did nothing, and the cops have done nothing against him. I need proof, so what should I do?
I, 46 male, married to a wonderful wife, 33, and we have a young family together, 11, 9, and 3. My wife and I have both had rough lives filled with all kinds of hardships, and our home and family is our pride and purpose. Recently, but unbeknownst to her, it's come under threat. I'll explain as matter-of-factly as possible. Over 20 years ago, in another life, I was a completely different person. I was in circles I shouldn't have been and doing things no one has any business of doing. My wife knows a few details, but has allowed me to leave the past in the past as I've done for her. Anyway, in that former life, I was briefly involved with a young woman a couple years younger than me. She became pregnant. Neither of us were ready to be parents, so I offered her a choice. She made the wrong decision and we haven't spoken since. I don't know how he, 17, learned who I am or how to reach me, but it did. There was a meeting this Monday. I was informed that the young woman I had been involved with was no longer with us after running a battle with oral cancer. I extended my condolences but made it clear that I have a family now which I love very much and can't allow to be disturbed. The meeting predictably went south from there with more venom than I'm proud to admit on both sides. I left and assumed that that would be the end of things. I was wrong. My sister-in-law, 30, contacted me yesterday morning and informed me that my bastard had somehow found her and made its existence known. There was a fight that ended in an ultimatum. Either I tell my wife the full story of this girl and what came of it in the next 3 days, or she's gonna go behind my back. I unblocked its social media account to tell it to leave my family alone. I've since heard about this as well. All I want to do is protect my marriage and my children, and I cannot afford a stupid mistake from my past coming to destroy everything I've worked so hard to build. All it had to do was build its own life and stop worrying about the past.
My wife accused me of cheating with a sitter, not sure where to go from here. When my wife gave birth, she left her job as she was struggling with schizophrenia, depression, and anxiety. There were times where I couldn't leave the house because she accused me of meeting other women. She went as far as putting a tracker on my phone, and fights would start if I went anywhere besides home or work. I do love my wife so much, and I love our son. During the last 2 years, my wife spent time searching for work and was offered a job a few months ago. I was laid off from my job and started working for a new company. Our son is back to attending school and is doing well. My job does require me to travel a lot, and my wife sometimes will have to stay late. We decided to hire a babysitter to help with getting my son off the bus and hanging with him until one of us gets home. We decided to hire a recent college graduate, 24 female. My son loved having her around. She informed us that she was going to head back to school to receive her master's and would have to cut back on her hours. I worked things out with my job to allow me to work from home 2 days a week. There were a few times where the sitter would be at the house while I was home working. The sitter stayed longer, and I did give her a little extra when she stayed past her time. My wife did see me give the sitter extra and accused me of sleeping with her. I denied the accusation and explained that I was giving her extra for staying later. The sitter texted me a few days ago letting me know that she was quitting. I asked why, and she told me that my wife was asking her uncomfortable questions. I did confront my wife, and she told me that one of her coworkers was going through a divorce because the husband was cheating with the nanny. She thought I was doing the same thing, and now I'm not sure where we stand anymore.
My wife is a cancer patient. She unfortunately started losing her hair due to chemotherapy, and she's been incredibly insecure about it, her lack of hair in particular. She got a wig and started wearing it. I don't mind it. I 100% support her since she only wears it around family and friends. Now my sister lost her apartment after a messy divorce and moved in with her twin daughter, 16, almost a month ago. Things have been going well except for my niece's constant remarks about my wife's wig. They got so hung up on it and kept asking lots of questions about it. They asked to take turns trying it on, suggested that they straighten it with their straightener, and so on, which was exhausting. They even pressured to see her without it, but my wife was uncomfortable and refused. Yesterday, I got home and found that my wife is locking herself in the bedroom and crying. I asked her what happened. She told me that she woke up and didn't find her wig, and then discovered that my nieces took it and hid it and urged her to come out so that they could see her without it. My wife repeatedly asked them to give it back, but they started laughing and recording. My wife had to lock the door to keep the distance because they didn't stop. I was fuming and went to the kitchen and confronted them. They acted confused, but I was able to get the wig back. I lashed out, telling them that they humiliated my wife and embarrassed her by taking her wig. They said it was just a lighthearted prank, which made me go off on them. My sister got involved and said that my wife was just being sensitive and the girls were just curious to see her without her wig, but she overreacted. I told her that her daughters were recording her. She saw nothing wrong in it and said that I overreacted as well. I lost it on her too and told her that she and my nieces are no longer welcome to stay at my home and they needed to leave.